I don't want to take care of you. Fight your illness alone. My husband glared at me coldly when I told him, I've been given 1 year to live. From that day on, he ignored me, and eventually moved out without a word. I was stunned by this treatment, as if all the years I had spent caring for his mother meant nothing. However, 6 months later, I received 1,000 voicemail messages from my husband. When I ignored them all, he did something unthinkable. It was finally time to settle the score. The memory of being attracted to my outgoing and sociable husband Richard and marrying him seems like ancient history now that I'm 58. I quit my long-time job as a pharmacist and spent 10 years, from age 47, caring for my mother-in-law who lived with us. She gradually became unable to use the toilet on her own and needed care day and night. My father-in-law always had an apologetic look on his face and bowed his head to me as I helped with the care. Thank you always. I don't know what we would have done without you. I couldn't have managed on my own. It's better with 2 people than 1. Let's rely on the doctors, day care, and helpers as much as we can. Of course, there were tough times, but I researched available support systems and cooperated with my father-in-law. However, my husband never helped, saying, caregiving is the wife's job, and instead started coming home later and later from work. He hadn't even been involved in raising our own children, so I suppose he had no intention of helping with caregiving either. Richard is sociable, but that's just his public face. He prioritized work socializing, went out drinking, and never did anything around the house. My father-in-law and I repeatedly asked Richard to help care for his mother, but he wouldn't listen at all. Then, 2 years ago, my mother-in-law passed away peacefully. I was with her at the end, and my father-in-law tearfully expressed his gratitude to me. After the years of caregiving ended and I was finally catching my breath, Richard suddenly announced during dinner with my father-in-law, I'm retiring at 60. I'm turning down the reemployment offer and quitting work entirely. Hold on a minute. The retirement money won't be enough to pay off the house loan if you retire at 60. I'll find a job too, so let's work together until we can manage the payments. I hurriedly tried to stop my husband, but he got angry. What? You're telling me to keep working like a horse. You're treating me like an ATM. There should be job openings for pharmacists, and I'll start working right away too. Don't be ridiculous. You've been a stay-at-home wife all this time, taking it easy. Using caregiving as an excuse, how self-righteous. You can work alone and pay off the loan from now on. My husband yelled, banging on the table, making the dishes rattle and nearly break. But I gave up the job I loved to care for your mother. You don't have to say it like that. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. If it weren't for her, my wife wouldn't have had such a peaceful end. How dare you say such things when you did nothing? My father-in-law raised his voice, defending me, but my husband ignored his words. After that, I begged my husband several times to reconsider retirement, but in the end, he turned down reemployment and quit his job. 3 months after Richard retired, he still hadn't told me anything about the company procedures or his retirement money. At a loss, I started poring over job listings, looking for new work. Then one day, I got a call from the hospital where I usually had my checkups. They said, We need to discuss something important, so please come to the hospital as soon as possible. Hearing the doctor's serious tone, I hurried alone to hear what they had to say. The doctor I always saw told me, "We found a serious illness. You don't have long. After caregiving, now illness." Everything went dark before my eyes. One trial after another was hitting me, with no time to catch my breath after my mother-in-law's passing. On my way home from the hospital in the evening, I trudged back with heavy steps. When I got home, my father-in-law seemed to be out. My husband was lounging in the room next to the living room, watching TV. Richard's face looked cheerful and in a good mood. "If I'm going to talk, it has to be now." I let out a small sigh and sat down next to him. "I just went to the hospital we always use. They called me in. It seems they found a problem in my health checkup, and, well, they've given me 1 year to live." As I broached the subject, my husband, still lying down and not even looking at me, clicked his tongue. "I'm at a good part in this show." He spat out irritably, making a shooing gesture with his hand. "But, honey, they said I only have a year left. They told me my condition will keep getting worse, and I might become bedridden." As I desperately tried to explain, he turned just his head to glare at me. "Huh? What did you say? I don't want to take care of you. Fight your illness alone." My husband got up with a loud noise and started walking to his room. "Wait a minute. This is important. Please listen." "Shut up." As I clung to him trying to explain, Richard yelled and shoved me away. I hit my head on the hallway wall and collapsed on the spot from the pain shooting through my neck. From then on, my husband ignored me. Even when my father-in-law tried to talk to him, Richard rejected even his own father. Then, about 2 weeks after I received the terminal diagnosis, I came home from shopping to find the house empty. My husband had moved out without saying a word to anyone. Moreover, all the valuables were gone, including the jewelry I had bought and treasured since I was single. Does this mean I've been abandoned? Remembering Richard's words, I gritted my teeth. I felt betrayed, but considering our future living expenses and loan repayments, I couldn't leave my husband as a missing person. I asked for help everywhere to find his whereabouts. Gradually, Richard's terrible secrets came to light. How could he? I can't believe it. I'll never forgive him. Furious, I continued to track down my husband's whereabouts, determined to get revenge. Then, 6 months later. "Hey, what's the meaning of this? I need money. Do something about it." One day, I received 1,000 voicemail messages from Richard. When I played them back, he was ranting one-sidedly about various things, but I didn't answer the phone and completely ignored him. As the voicemails kept being recorded, my husband must have thought the phone wasn't getting through, because he said, "I'm coming over there now." Finally, the time for payback has come. My eyes glittered as I waited for Richard to come home. "Hey, you're here, aren't you?" About 30 minutes after the last call, my husband appeared at the house. Richard, who came into the living room, looked gaunt and his voice was hoarse. On the other hand, I was sitting silently in the living room chair, with glossy hair and vibrant skin. He was startled by my healthy appearance as he weakly sat down in the chair in front of me. "What do you want now?" I said coldly. My husband fidgeted with the hem of his now baggy clothes and started talking about what had happened. According to him, he had been living off the money he took, but his health kept getting worse. Suffering from headaches, nausea, and high fever, Richard quickly went to a new hospital he found where he had moved. However, my husband had forgotten to change his insurance after retiring from the company. "You've always handled the paperwork, but you slacked off. Because of that, I had to pay all the medical expenses out of pocket. You retired on your own and never told me anything about your retirement arrangements. How was I supposed to know you hadn't switched your insurance?" I retorted with a sigh. I had taken care of my own health insurance procedures to match my husband's retirement. When I tried to ask if I should take care of his procedures at the same time, Richard had ignored me. "Well, I thought I'd be fine because I had $150,000 in retirement money. At first, anyway." His expression clouded over as he spoke, and he hunched his shoulders. Listening to his story, it seems my husband thought he'd be okay paying for medical treatment out of pocket for a while, feeling flush with cash. However, the new hospital started all the tests from scratch, and with the continued high medical bills, he quickly ran out of money. My husband was grumbling complaints, but suddenly he looked at me and tilted his head. "By the way, I've been thinking since I got here, why do you look so healthy? Didn't you say you were given a year to live 6 months ago? Oh my, didn't the new hospital doctor tell you anything? You seem to have misunderstood, but it's you who has little time left due to illness, not me." I'll never forget my husband's face at that moment. Richard was so shocked that his eyes widened, and he froze like a robot with dead batteries. On that day when the hospital contacted me, the doctor and I had decided that I would tell my husband about his condition. With his limited life expectancy, it was necessary to inform him as soon as possible and at the right timing. "But you wouldn't listen to me at all." "Huh? That was about me. You should have reported it properly. Are you trying to kill me?" What could I do when the person who misunderstood that I was sick ignored everything I said and ended up leaving the house? He was at a loss for words and awkwardly averted his eyes. "Anyway, I need money for treatment. You can get it from Dad's account if you have to. And sort out the health insurance." He grimaced in annoyance and pounded his fist on the table. The purpose of the phone calls that had been ringing since morning was to ask for money. Now you're after your father-in-law's money too, and trying to dump the paperwork on me. You don't think we'd do that for you, do you? I raised my voice, my eyes blazing with anger. My husband, who had never seen me raise my voice before, trembled with genuine surprise. Besides, there's no way all $150,000 could disappear in just 6 months on hospital bills alone. I took out some photos from an envelope at the edge of the table and laid them out. They showed my husband cuddling with a woman about 10 years younger than him. "I know you've been cheating and wasting money too." Richard peered at the photos as if jolted and clicked his tongue. He clearly hadn't expected his affair to be discovered, so he crossed his arms and clammed up. "I found out about my husband's misdeeds when his subordinate visited our house while I was searching for Richard's whereabouts. He had come to deliver a fountain pen that my husband had forgotten in his company locker when he retired. However, when he saw my face at the door, Richard's subordinate looked confused and asked, "Is the mistress home?" When I answered, "I am the wife," he frowned. As I listened to his story, it turned out that for the past 10 years, since my mother-in-law's care began, my husband had been meeting a woman every day after work. Moreover, Richard had been introducing this woman to others as his wife. The subordinate was shocked to find a different person as the wife when he visited his boss's house. "You've got some nerve, playing around with a woman while I was busy with caregiving," I shouted, pointing at the building in the photo on the table. It turns out that when my husband left home, he had moved into his mistress's apartment. After hearing the story from Richard's subordinate, I continued searching for his whereabouts, and finally located where he was living just 3 days before he came back. When I found him and his mistress happily entering the apartment together, I was overwhelmed with the urge to catch him and scold him right there and then. But for the sake of divorce and claiming compensation, I hid in the shadows to take photos as evidence of the affair. The frustration and humiliation I felt at that time was heart-wrenching. "Looks like you've been living it up. Trips, expensive shopping, dining at high-end restaurants. It's not just medical expenses." I took out more photos and printouts of credit card usage history from the envelope, revealing what my husband had been doing, cornering him. "I'm divorcing someone who not only doesn't value his family but repeatedly betrays them. And I'll be claiming substantial compensation." I glared at my husband with a sharper gaze than his and slammed down the divorce papers. Well, well. If you're divorcing me, that works out well for me too. I can happily live with my new woman without any trouble. Seeing the divorce papers, my husband smirked as if to say I was a fool, and immediately signed them. I snatched up the paper at that moment and tucked it securely into the envelope in my hand. Then I called out towards the room outside. "Father, Richard says he's going to live with his mistress." I don't think that's going to happen." The living room door opened, and my father-in-law, who had been absent until now, appeared. "I've already signed the divorce papers, so it's too late now." Even seeing his father's face, my husband laughed smugly. Actually, my father-in-law had been cooperating all along, helping to search for my husband's whereabouts and investigate the affair. "When I heard you were coming back, I went to meet your woman. We had a long talk, and I just got back." As my father-in-law spoke with a smile, Richard's face gradually turned pale. "So, how did it go with the woman?" I told her that there are consequences for straying from the path of righteousness. I said we'd be claiming compensation. She must have been quite surprised. I smiled confidently. Only my husband was left sweating and gulping nervously. She cried and begged for forgiveness, saying she'd cut ties with Richard immediately. "What did you say?" Richard, who had been quiet all this time, suddenly raised his voice. He clearly never imagined he would be the one getting dumped. I sighed and looked at my husband with eyes that said he was beyond help. "Father, it seems he doesn't believe it." Then, my father-in-law took out his smartphone and started dialing. After the ringtone sounded on the speaker, a woman's voice was heard. My husband immediately called out the woman's name, but the person on the other end started yelling furiously. You said you'd never cause me trouble, but because of you, I have to pay $30,000 in compensation, she ranted, listing her grievances. You were wrong to choose Richard in the first place. Both you and I were. But a sin is a sin. I'll make sure you pay the compensation, I spoke to the mistress in an angry voice. Overwhelmed by my intensity, the woman who had been making a fuss suddenly fell silent. We'll talk through lawyers from now on, I declared, and my father-in-law quietly hung up the phone. Left behind, Richard looked down diagonally with his mouth half open, completely at a loss. My father-in-law and I looked at each other and shrugged. Hey, family is the most important after all, right? We shouldn't be falling apart like this. Cornered, my husband suddenly stood up from his chair and, on the verge of tears, started begging for reconciliation. Just so you know, the compensation I'll be getting from you is $100,000. That includes the value of my stolen jewelry. When you cheat for 10 years, the compensation gets pretty high. I showed both my hands with palms out and pushed away Richard as he tried to cozy up to me. My husband, who had fallen on his backside in an undignified manner, looked at my father-in-law as if seeking help. It's no use counting on me. I'm cutting ties with you. All the inheritance will go to her. No way. Hey, say something to Dad for me. Brushed off by his father, Richard now tried to sidle up to me. However, I said nothing and just glared at him with ice-cold eyes. Seeing this, my husband seemed to realize it was truly over. He left the house in tears. After that, I immediately submitted the divorce papers and separated from my husband. Richard and his mistress each ended up paying hefty compensation. They didn't help each other out, and ultimately broke up. Word on the street is that they both borrowed money from shady sources to pay me, and now they're being chased by debt collectors. After wasting 10 years of everything, all they're left with is debt. What a miserable life. I'm nothing but grateful to my father-in-law, who always helped me when things were tough. And I've returned to work as a pharmacist. It's fun to be back at work after so long, and the time I can spend freely outside is refreshing. The neighbors have been worried about me, and we're planning to go on a trip together soon. True friends are worth waiting for. For now, I'm enjoying my own time.